I'm just overwhelmed because I didn't think I would react this way, because most of the people out here are my friends, and I know so many people, and they know all the good stuff about me and all the bad stuff about me. And one of the things I did, that we had a press conference a little earlier, and I told them about, I was going to make some remarks here, but two of the things I wanted to talk about. First of all, my father, who was a dynamic man who influenced me greatly. And I didn't find out until maybe 5 years ago. He died when he was 74, so that's been a long time ago, that he had written an essay when he was in college. He went to Alcorn College, that's where he met my mother, and it was called A Life of Service. And he lived a life of service, but he never pronounced what we should do. I have a brother and a sister. They're 10 and 9 years older than me, so actually I was raised like an only child. But I always knew from the time I was 8 years old, when my parents would talk about things that happened in Mississippi, that I wanted to be a lawyer. Of course, along the way, I wanted to be a singer, a dancer, an actress, and all of that. Always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and my dad influenced me very greatly about that. When I joined the law firm of Goodman Crockett, it was at a time when women lawyers, or women graduates from law school, were not being interviewed at all by the big law firms. All the guys were, but we didn't get interviewed. But my best friend in law school was Gladys Barsamian, who was an Armenian young lady, and she and I decided we'd open up our own law office, which we had to do, yes. And we were able for 2 years to keep it open. I think we made about $700 the first year, which came up with it. But after that, both of us got offers, mine from the Goodman Crockett firm and hers from the firm that did probate law, because that's what she did primarily. And we made it from there on in. When I decided to go to Mississippi in '64, I'm glad you told me the date, because I had forgotten what time it was. It was a whole year I was down there. And it was when no white lawyer in Mississippi would handle any of the cases that had to do with people who were trying to vote and struggling to learn to read and write so that they would know how to fill out a ballot. And there were 3 black lawyers, Jack Young, Carsey Hall, and R. Jess Brown, that handled cases, and then one white lawyer, Leonard Rosenthal, who worked with us. He was a recent graduate of school. He said, I feel everybody needs to be represented. The whole state bar of Michigan should have been rejected by the American Bar Association, because they weren't living up to what we were supposed to, the tenets of what a lawyer is supposed to be about now. But anyway, we worked that year there. At the time, I was called, my name was Shropshire, it was Claudia Shropshire, and a lot of people don't know. I married and divorced while I was in law school, but when I came out, it was Claudia Shropshire. And the Jackson Press, when I came down there, in addition to calling me an outside agitator, called me a near-loving Jew that was down there working. They didn't know what Shropshire was, and evidently they had never seen me before, because it's pretty obvious that I'm not Jewish. Anyway, what those lawyers did during that period of time, and there were hundreds of them that came from all over the country, and they went to every county in Mississippi, every place. The SNCC kids were arrested, the Cocoa people were arrested, the local people were arrested. They had lawyers who had come from California, New York, and everywhere else to represent them. It was a very successful campaign. Later, the NAACP group came, and later another group that, under President Kennedy, they had set up a group of white lawyers who came down there. But our firm, our Lawyers Guild, was down there first, and we were able to do some remarkable things. And after I came back, as was said in my bio, I worked for one of the things before I started with the administrative law judge thing. I was asked by a group of people here, local, We were trying to end the war in Vietnam, and they wanted to put that on the ballot for the people to vote for, against. And the thing, we knew that it would really not do anything, but it would let the country know and let the president and our congressional people know that we didn't want another war in Vietnam. And so it was called Proposition E on the ballot, and we went all over the city and we got it on the ballot and we won. And at least they knew that we were not about starting wars in other countries or precipitating any kind of rebellions in other countries. So it was a very difficult time. I loved what I was doing. I liked the fact that working with Meiklejohn Civil Liberties Organization out of California, I was able to go to the United Nations, give reports to them about how the U.S. had violated so many of our treaty agreements and our human rights agreements and things like that. So it was something a little above and beyond the traditional work of a lawyer, but it was something that needed to be done. What I like, thank you, what I like about being a lawyer is when I have young people come up to me and say, you know, I went to law school because of you, or something you said at such and such a time changed my life, made me want to do this or want to do that. So it's a very public position, and it's one that, as I said, since I was 8 years old, I always wanted to be a lawyer, and I thought that the lawyers could do things that other people couldn't. Right now, other than the Mississippi incident, the year that I spent in Mississippi, and the fact that I worked with the International Association of Democratic Lawyers, we held a tribunal which sued the United States government and the chemical companies that sprayed Vietnam with chemicals during that period. And the trial was held in Paris, and we had people who came as witnesses. Of course, the U.S. didn't show up. But what it did, it showed the world what we had done in using a chemical that was the most fatal and deadly chemical that's ever been used. We're talking about weapons of mass destruction. It entirely destroyed foliage where it was sprayed. It destroyed animal life, and never to recover. And they say that the results are worse for each generation of young people because the DNA was so affected. It'll be 300 years before it's out of the soil and out of them. So there are some things that it's just impossible for us to understand what our country has done. But what I am really involved in now, and I want to involve everybody in this room, want you to get your pledge. We've been working, we just got that 2 weeks ago with Cheryl Lavash, my friend who's here today from Cuba. What's been happening in Cuba, this was the night, they call it the night colloquial. We are planning, again, last May 5th, we had an event in Washington. We picketed the White House and we demonstrated, and we had people from all over the world, premiers and prime ministers from different countries and nations, and we had Angela Davis as one of our keynote speakers at our community event. And we're planning another one again this year. There is no reason why the United States should have imposed this blockade against Cuba. We are not at war with Cuba, and it is a dishonorable thing that we have done. It also is horrific as far as the people of Cuba are concerned, because what we've done is we forced other countries. We said, if you go to Cuba and if you're going to be giving them supplies or anything like that, you cannot come to the U.S. At least until 6 months have passed. Cuba, on the other hand, has, under the regime, and see, all of this was trying to get a regime change when Raul's brother, Fidel, came into power. And the rich people in Cuba all exited to Florida, to, as you know, Miami, Florida. And they're the ones who have been doing the bombing of the hotels and the shooting into prominent places. And over 3,000 Cubans have been killed because of what they have done out of Florida, but those are the expatriates who left there. And